Welcome back to the Imaginary Gallery. It's TJ, your host. We're further exploring the origins of psychopathy. The last part of the section from Robert D Hare's book, Without Conscience, The Disturbing World of the Psychopaths Among Us. Another look at the Camouflage Society. Dr. Hare states, among our increasingly widespread social distress, the issue of psychopathy's origins gains an ominous significance. A recent case in the city in which he lives brought home not only the seriousness of rising juvenile crime rate, but the meaning behind the statistics. A 13-year-old killer was given the maximum sentence under the Canadian Young Offenders Act, 3 years, for the bludgeoning murder of a 12-year-old youth. The motive for this murder? The youth had failed to provide $250 worth of marijuana paid for by the murderer. A very grown-up crime indeed. The nameless murderer was described as manipulative, street-smart, and messed up from the start. The details surrounding the murder are of lasting significance. For example, friends from the murderer's neighborhood described him as just a regular guy who skipped school, smoked marijuana, and played video games. When asked if the youth had any special interests, the friend stated,
"Yeah, shoplifting."
The defense lawyer told the bail hearing the convicted killer began breaking into apartments at the age of 8. The youth was starting fires at age 9, and he ran away 10 times during the last 3 years. The boy has convictions for breaking and entering, theft, and possession of narcotics. He was suspended from school several times for disruptive behavior and for truancy. In 7th grade, he was expelled for stealing from the milk program. He smoked marijuana daily by age 11 and later became a regular user of hashish and occasional cocaine. In his sentencing, the judge cited doctors' profiles that say the youth shows classic antisocial behavior. They do not experience guilt in the same fashion as others and have difficulty empathizing. By and large, they do not change over time. Does this sound familiar? He asks us. Well, perhaps it does. The point of this particular portrait is not diagnosis of the young assailant, but rather it's a comment on circumstances surrounding this guy's murderous act. Quote, stories circulating in the area where he lived suggested as many as 20 youths knew the accused was responsible for the murder, but said nothing. Next, he has a little gray box stating that gangs have always provided great opportunities for young psychopaths. The impulsive, selfish, callous, egocentric, and aggressive tendencies easily blend in with, and may even set the tone for, many of the gang's fun activities. Indeed, there cannot be many other activities that produce so many rewards for violent psychopaths. And with such impurity, local youth gangs are very much involved in drug dealing, intimidation, theft, and extortion. They recruit many of their new members from the schools, and their presence in and around the schools is a constant reminder to students and teachers of the influence and raw power that these gangs have. Although society is showing increased alarm at the presence of gangs in our various communities, penalties for unlawful gang-related acts are often very trivial. In some recent cases, 2 15-year-olds and a 16-year-old were charged with gang-related activities, including auto theft, assault possession of a dangerous weapon, assault with a dangerous weapon, and assault causing bodily harm. Most of the charges were dropped because the parents of the teenage witnesses, fearing reprisals, refused to allow their youngsters to appear in court to testify. A police spokesperson said it was very disturbing that through threats and intimidation, a criminal can have the charge against him or her dropped. And he noted that there's always a witness tampering in any gang-related type of charge. These gangs have a collective sense of power and invincibility that is not unlike that of some of their psychopathic members. Dr. Hare states, as he believes our society is moving in the direction of permitting, reinforcing, and in some cases actually valuing some of these traits that they list in their psychopathy checklist. Traits like impulsivity, irresponsibility, lack of remorse, and so on Our schools may be evolving into microcosms of a camouflage society, pursuing their self-gratifying, destructive ways and endangering the general student population. Troubling indeed are the implications of the silence of those 20 Canadian youths who knew the identity of the murderer, but, for whatever the reason may be, told nobody. They suggest that our society may not only be fascinated, but increasingly tolerant of the psychopathic personality disorder. Even more terrifying is the possibility that cool but vicious psychopaths will become twisted role models for kids raised in dysfunctional families or disintegrating communities where little value is placed on honesty, fair play, and concern for the welfare of other people. The very last portion is, quote, "What have I done?" Dr. Hare tells you that it's hard to imagine that any parent of a psychopath who's not asked the question, almost certainly with a sense of desperation,
"What have I done wrong as a parent to bring this about in my child?"
The answer is, possibly, not a thing. To summarize his sparse data, they don't know why people become psychopaths, but current evidence leads them away from the commonly held idea that the behavior of parents bears sole or even primary responsibility for this disorder. This doesn't mean that parents and the environment are completely off the hook, though. Parenting behavior may not be responsible for the essential ingredients of the disorder, but it may have a very large amount to do with how the syndrome develops and is expressed by the creature. There's little doubt that poor parenting and unfavorable social and physical environments can greatly exacerbate potential problems, and that they play a powerful role in molding the behavior patterns of these kids. The complex interplay of these forces helps to determine why only a few psychopaths become serial killers while the vast majority go through life as ordinary criminals, shady business people, or legal predators. Although the origins of psychopathy remain murky, the improved accuracy in diagnosis and growing body of research allows them to begin formulating better ways to deal with the psychopaths in our communities. That is the subject of the last part of his book. As far as my own view on this particular section, when we go back to the beginning where Hare tells us about this kid, 13-year-old killer, who murdered over marijuana. Not sure if that's an actual true story, but say it is. Sure, at the age of 13, there are plenty of kids who are doing things such as this one. When he mentioned the murder and said it was a very grown-up crime, and then said that his friends said, oh, he was just a regular guy, he stated the kid was described as manipulative and streetwise and messed up from the start. Then they mentioned his shoplifting. Sounds like that kind of behavior is normalized, like it's no big deal to the other kids. Like, oh yeah, he's a normal guy. Oh, he shoplifts. I shoplifted once when I was a child. I didn't know I was doing it. I wanted a peanut, and I took it, and I ate it, and I was told by someone later,
"You've stolen. You're going to go to hell for that now."
And I said, well, I didn't really know it was wrong. I just wanted the peanut. It was there. As far as the 13-year-old kid stealing and taking drugs and everything else, well, that does happen in today's world. That doesn't necessarily, in my own view, mean that they're a psychopath, but it's very probable if they do a lot of stuff. I know some people rationalize, like they say, if the Coke machine accidentally gives me an extra quarter, I'm just going to keep it because they robbed me for all the money I spend in there. That's one rationalization. Or the other side would be, I got an extra quarter, I've got to turn that in. And some people do that, but that seems like it's becoming extinct. No opinion either way, because I've been on both sides. I guess what he's trying to say is that this type of evil behavior is normalized. But it's true as far as the society moving in the direction of permitting and reinforcing the types of traits that are in this guy's psychopathy checklist. Because some of those characteristics, if placed in like a business situation, which we've seen in real life, can result in a very greedy person becoming a very rich person if they don't have those hindrances of conscience and worry about hurting someone. Well, then they'll be successful, but that doesn't mean that everybody else is benefiting from it. But yes, the society, as I've covered in another video, is psychopathic. It encourages such traits. Dr. Hare is very troubled with the fact that those 20 Canadian youths didn't turn in that murderer. Evidently, these kids thought he was cool, which I've seen that when I was in high school and I knew somebody who stole. I'd think, wow, that's cool, you did that, and got away with it. But of course, if I tried it, I'd probably be caught. I just lived vicariously through the other thieves. To expand a little further, when Hare is talking about the Camouflage Society, where these creatures can hide out and pursue their destructive, self-gratifying blah blah blah, and he found it troubling that the kids didn't tell, but as well, he mentions that our society is fascinated by such things, which I can understand. If you're a kid growing up being taught right and wrong, and sometimes when you're told you're not supposed to do this, that's wrong, you might imagine, I wonder if I did do this. If I hadn't heard that it was wrong, I probably would. And it's kind of fascinating, like the way movies are, horror films. We love to watch those other people and live vicariously through them, but we don't want to do that stuff ourselves. But some do think that the ones who do the crimes are cool. And I, again, relate to that because the stores charge too much. But I drew the line when I was younger at if it's a person I know who's worked hard for money and they bought something and I took it, well, that's a whole different story. A faceless corporation who robs you every time you buy a soft drink and getting an extra quarter from them is different from you actually going to someone's home that you're friends with and picking money out of their mother's purse, stealing. Especially if that mother's suffering financially and you don't care. It's like, I need that money, and you take it. That's psychopathic. Still, I could imagine a lot of people, when they're young, looking up to this, and of course that would inspire them to probably do something very similar. But the what have I done part, where the parent thinks they're to blame, well, that would depend, in my opinion, if the parent itself is a cluster B type creature that does horrifying things, and then witnesses their child doing the same type of horrifying things. I would say, well, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. But these parents a lot of times will try to act like they're the perfect parent, and this kid, this devil child, is just doing all these terrible things. We don't know what we did wrong, to make it look like they think that they're guilty, which they probably are, but doesn't necessarily mean they are, according to Dr. Hare. But it probably contributes if they see their mama with a bunch of different men all the time, and then tell them,
oh, you've got to be true to your boyfriend.
As they look at her and say, well, you're not true to yours.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Sorry, but kids tend to follow what you do, not what you say. It's interesting to think about, but I don't know if it's that important to determine the origins of psychopathy. Maybe it is. We'll never really know for sure, will we? And to reflect upon creatures you've been involved with and gain more insight. I'm anxious to see what his final chapters are going to tell us.
It's Narcopath confession time.
Great, so I had another date. Well, this one was fine at first, until my fans showed up in the restaurant and started talking about me and wanted me to sign some of my topless photos. When I just tried to look at this guy and was like,
I don't know what they're talking about. I've never posed topless.
He was a Christian boy. He had a lot of money. He didn't buy it. He was like, no, honey, that's your picture. You are a harlot. And he called me all these names. I don't even know what they mean. He didn't like the fact that my hairs are on display in public. It's none of his business. He shouldn't have looked. He is so stupid. He's missing out on the chance of his lifetime to have the girl of his dreams that would be everything he ever wanted. His loss. Why do people have to be so sensitive? Who cares if my private parts are on display to the world? Doesn't have to affect him. He doesn't have to know about it. But he had to be nosy and look over the shoulders and see that it was my beautiful body. He hadn't even licked yet. I'm going to try to convince him it was a Photoshop. It was a hoax. Someone took a picture of my face and put it on someone else's body. I hope it works. If it doesn't, I've got 6 others on the list, so no loss. I just thought you should know. Always be there. Sometimes if I shout, not what intended, it was just somehow. Oh, brought you there. I'm sorry, but I was just thinking of the right mistake. I know it'll sound the way